Hello, everyone, and welcome to Evenings with an Author at the American Library in Paris. Tonight, you are in for a very fun, special evening, a bit wackier than what we usually do, but a lot more interesting, I think, too. If this is your first time at the library, welcome. We're delighted to have you. We host events somewhat like this, though typically a bit more orthodox, 2 to 3 times per week. So have a look at our program's calendar as well to see if there are other upcoming events that might interest you. My name is Emily Biggs. I'm the programs manager here. And tonight, I am so delighted to be joined by the absolutely brilliant and hilarious Patricia Lockwood, who is currently writer-in-residence here at the library for a couple more days.
Yes.
Only a few more.
Only a few more.
Only a few more.
Yeah. So you're getting the last little
last dregs.
Drop
yeah.
of me. The last dregs of me. That's right.
Ferris has beaten all the life out of you, and this is what's left. It's been such a pleasure to have Patricia in residence over these past couple of weeks, to see the light that you bring to the library, the energy, your commitment to your work, your commitment to sharing with other people. It's been an absolute pleasure.
My spoon.
Your fantastic, very large spoon.
This I did hang in my cubicle downstairs. It's been very magical. Tonight we will call upon it for help and aid and guidance, and I will also use it as my pointer.
If you have sensed the energy shift in this library in the past 2 weeks, it's because there is a magical spoon in the basement. And enjoy it, because the spoon is leaving.
I'm going to take it away.
If you haven't spent some time soaking up Patricia Lockwood's magic spoon, you have 2 more days.
Yeah.
I'll see you there.
Right.
Tonight, we are going to be doing an interactive conversation, but also seminar workshop about the short form and about Twitter. May it rest in peace.
May it rest in hell. May it rest in hell for
what
it did to us.
It is dead.
It's gone. It's dead. So I'm jumping right in, honestly.
Let's beat the corpse.
Do you need to do the...
No, people know who you are.
People know who I am. This is fine. We're jumping right in. So Emily approaches me when we're talking about the events we might do, and she's like, let's do a workshop. I was like, yes, obviously I'm an excellent teacher. And she's like, let's do something about Twitter. Let's talk about...
Can I just interrupt and say...
Defend yourself.
Well, before I said let's do something about Twitter, I said, Patricia, what sort of workshop would you do? And you said, Animorphs poetry.
Yeah,
and I didn't know what that was.
That's my
so
other
I had to
big
get
workshop.
creative.
Yeah. And basically you just write a poem where you turn into an animal. These don't have to be big ideas. So you can try that too when you go home. But she's like, you're the Twitter maven. You're the poet laureate of Twitter. It was often said by one guy. And so, what do we think about it as a literary form? And I said, I could have done that workshop like 10 years ago. Like something happened now where that is no longer the case. So I think we will start with a postmortem of what it was, what it meant. Do we think that it had literary value? And do we think that it teaches us anything about literature or compression or form going forward? So we will begin. Twitter, what the hell was it? I open to the floor. Are we posters here? Do we have
who tweeted? Raise your hand if you have been known to tweet.
Okay.
In the past, if you tweeted a single tweet.
Zoe, right? Yes, Zoe has posted. All right, so we've posted. What do we feel about it? Did anyone use Twitter as a literary outlet? Yeah, you can also just talk. You want this spoon? You can pass it around, honestly, anyone. Yeah, did anyone feel like it was a literary outlet? Like you were actually being creative on there.
Why don't we, let's warm up the crowd. Tell us how you came to Twitter. Did you see it as a literary outlet or something else entirely?
So my husband got me an iPhone on his birthday, because that's the kind of relationship that we have. And he was installing all these apps, and he was like, would you like to have Twitter? Famous final question before you die. And I was like, yes, I would like to have Twitter. So he put Twitter on my phone. I knew one other guy on there who was kind of on the outskirts of what was then called weird Twitter. And it just kind of ushered me immediately into the world. But also, any kind of thing that I ever did online was creative. I was an early Diaryland person. I don't think that anyone here would remember Diaryland. But, it was like very, very early, before you could even, we did our encoding, we did our little animations. It was just purely text-based. And we were discussing beforehand that really, for us, the golden age of Twitter was the textual era. Even maybe before pictures, like when you would compose pretty much a small story and put it in that place, and it could kind of stand on its own. Yeah. that kind of ceased, I would say, with the image and then embedded video and then quote tweets and that sort of thing. But there was really a time, I would say the golden era was maybe like 2010 to maybe 2014, when people were doing very literary things on there. Okay, so if no one has anything to offer about their own feelings, wait.
Yeah, we'll bring you a microphone.
We'll bring you a mic.
There's a Zoom audience too who wants to hear your thoughts. Hi, Zoom.
Hi, everyone. Whenever I was doing my undergrad in English Lit, which was 2010 to 2013, one of the exercises for a module I did in revolutionary literature, which was sort of the 1790s, was they asked us all to set up Twitter accounts from Mary Wollstonecraft's perspective, from William Godwin's perspective, and sort of have a Twitter battle with each other about all our revolutionary thoughts. Can't remember what exactly I said at the time, but very much in line with what you're discussing about it being a literary forum.
Yeah, I think that was very active at one time. You had a lot of things in persona. You also had people, like, I remember one of the early accounts I followed was like Peep's Diary, you know? So you're just like getting little bite-sized bits of that. And that was, again, all very much text-based, really not relying on images of any kind. Was just like using the imagination. So I think at that time, it was a forum for those things. The sort of thing, too, that we're talking about, we're going to maybe talk about some examples of tweets. Now, does anyone have like a tweet that they really can honestly reel off by heart? Zoe, I know that you do. I know that you have some posts that you remember by heart. Everyone's got one. So for a lot of people, like, is Paris any good or not? Something like that. It's memorable. You remember something like that.
And I have to say, Patricia, mine is yours. It's your tweet.
Yeah, I expect
and
it to be.
And it's about, are you familiar with Patricia's cat Miette? Who has heard of Miette?
Okay, so
I first heard of Miette many years ago.
I'm looking at the Zoom audience.
I
know that you know who she is. This is a problem within this room. We're going to introduce you to her.
Yeah. Can I read out your Miette tweet,
Absolutely.
or would you like to recite it?
No, I would like it if you did it.
Okay,
yeah.
so this is from Patricia of the past, before she became the Patricia who stands before us.
Right.
Today, you tweeted, "Me, lightly touching Miette with the side of my foot. Miette, move out of the way, please, so I don't trip on you. Miette, her eyes enormous. You kick Miette? You kick her body like the football? Oh, jail for mother for 1,000 years."
Yes. So this was originally posted A, with no image, and B, without anyone knowing that she was a cat. And everyone just read this and they were like, she's a cat, right? Like, she's talking about a cat, and yes, I was.
I sent it to my family group chat. I was like, she's a cat.
I can't believe we didn't put her on a slide. We should have put her on a slide, but I can show her at the end. Yeah. But yeah, so for a lot of people, that became like a meme. It became just like a memorable thing, and then they would say it in their houses, you know, it became like an in-joke.
You kick her body like the football.
You kick her body like the football, jail for mother, that sort of thing. So these are like kind of like mimetic things that you pick up on. So does anyone have any others like that? I think you have like a drill one or two.
I have a drill one.
Oh yeah, we have a drill one. And it's probably the one you're thinking of. Which one are you thinking of?
One who's like me and my friends, or me and some assholes are about to head into I actually have it.
Oh my
you
gosh.
prepared it! Good job,
Yes,
Zoe.
I love receipts. Okay, me and a bunch of stupid assholes are going to start a community in the middle of the desert to either die or prove a very important point.
Which we can talk. That happened. So
it's called
these
Burning
things, yes, it literally just happened. So drill, I did early lectures on drill, like way back in the day, sort of talking about him as this id of the internet.
Can you explain who drill is for those who are less online?
I mean, can you explain who drill is? He is the subconscious creature, I would say, of Twitter. He can't be canceled. He can't be killed. He can only say funny things.
He has no identity.
He has no identity.
He's perfectly anonymous.
He only appears.
Online character.
I've seen him. I know who he is, but you don't, and you can never know. So if you go far enough back, like, you know who drill is, but you can read your drill tweets.
So
as well.
a bit of more context about drill for those who don't know drill. Drill is a Twitter persona, does have an identity, has been identified, but for a long time didn't, and tweets in this sort of weird Twitter voice.
Well, he would never call it that. Also, his avatar is just Jack Nicholson in black sunglasses. Okay.
And his name, I believe, is Wint. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's something very interesting going on with that where all British people call him Wint. We're like, no, he's Drill. So don't make that mistake, okay?
So handle Drill, name Wint, tweets very strange things.
Yeah.
Has been compared in the news frequently, perhaps unfortunately, to Donald Trump in the sense that he has a very specific belligerent tone, which expresses nonsensical but slightly comprehensible things.
Right.
It's almost there, but it's not quite.
So he's the crazy guy on YouTube. He's the crazy guy in the comments section. He's the one that you're just like, who the hell is that? That's Drill. And he's embodying all of those things.
But he's just normal enough to set you on edge. There's something uncanny to him.
Yeah, it's
so
true.
the Drill tweet that I have, this is in all capitals, and it's if the zoo bans me for hollering at the animals, I will face God and walk backwards into hell.
Yeah, and you really, again, it's one of those things where you're like, anyone? You sort of do have to be there at the time.
Yeah.
Like the moment when Drill drops, one of the classics.
But it's interesting because that's a moment that's passed.
It is.
And so we're doing the postmortem on Twitter right now.
We are doing the postmortem.
So why isn't Drill funny anymore?
I mean,
what's happened?
those things still are funny to me, but I am very old. But yes, this leads us into the question, like, what was it? What was its value? Did it have literary value? Can anyone speak on this? Zoe, what do you think?
I mostly use it for
Microphone?
Oh, sorry. I'm doing like a seminar, so I'm like really busting the microphone around the room.
I guess for me, I had a private account, so I was only tweeting to a very small audience. Secret. I won't tell you guys my username because it's embarrassing, but
you definitely
but
don't
vulgar.
Have to. Okay.
And I mostly used it to ironically talk about my sex life or to shit post.
Yeah.
And now it's gotten to the point where I don't feel like putting anything into it of my own, and now I'm mostly retweeting every now and then.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us reach that point where it, in the initial phase, is creative, and then you're just reading so much that you don't feel like saying anything of your own, and then you just post things from other people.
Yeah, I'm mostly like retweeting like 6-word tweets that are just like, they get me on my commute, and I'm like, you know what, we'll save that so I can find it later.
It's healthier.
Like Hunter Harris will tweet like, rigatoni, some big old freaks.
Yeah, and it's
true. Like, yeah, she's right.
It really is true that rigatoni is some big old freaks. Yeah,
and
we can all resonate with that, can't we?
We can. They hold so much sauce that's so freaky.
And the big hole. Actually, we're going to tie that into our literary efforts later, so we'll come back to that, Zoe.
Got some big pasta coming for you. But I think that a lot of what you said here speaks to the sort of enigma that is Twitter, that it's both very public and intensely private. You're on there talking about your sex life to a private audience that you've selected for yourself when the entire internet is out there as well. And with the phenomenon of the retweet, it's this process of reproducing the language.
Yes.
And I hear it in both of you. You have internet language, but then other people in the room they don't have that. They don't find Drill funny.
And
like at a certain point, this entered.
But it's textual. Like, you're seeing like the words as you speak. Like, it's, and so something like that is a joke. We talked about this a little bit last night, where it's like, can we put that in a book? Is that funny in a novel? If people are like sitting around the table at an Italian restaurant and someone's like, rigatoni, some big old freaks, is that like plausible dialogue in a novel? Is it funny in a novel? Or is it only funny in this context that we've created for it? Right. So did it teach us anything about compression? My personal feeling is that the original word limit, the character limit of 144 was better. It was much better. And then it was extended, and then it became disgusting to me.
But
Thoughts?
It's interesting.
Thoughts? Go ahead.
Audrey?
Oh.
No. Well, I think that it's interesting that you're a poet and that's your stance.
Yeah.
It makes me think of Oulipo, the idea that when you establish rules for the text that you're creating, that leads to the creative act.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. And this is true in poetry. Everyone's like, oh my God, like rhyme schemes, form, all of these things are so terrible. No, if you are stuck, you want to write a guzzle. Like, you want to work within a very tightly constrained form, because it's like It's like one of those blankets. What is the weighted blanket?
Gravity blankets?
No, it's like the weighted blanket you get under there, and you're like a dog in a thunder sweater, and it just squeezes you really tight, and then you're safer in there. And you can say what you want, and you can express yourself within those lines.
I mean, it's the purpose of form and writing, right?
Exactly.
Like it literally forms it.
It is the purpose
forms
of
the
form.
work you do.
So what was it? What was Twitter? R.I.P.
It's useful as well, perhaps, to think of it in stages, and to think of what seems obvious to you that you haven't thought about in a long time. So as I was preparing for this funny seminar, I was arriving back at the very simple idea of Twitter as a space of anonymity, a space of access. You have to remember that a lot of this was really unprecedented before it happened. So, for example, access to celebrities. Like, I still vividly remember 8th grade, I'm getting out of algebra, Niall Horan's just tweeted, and suddenly, like, I have to be online. I have to tweet him. I have to let him know that I want him to see me.
Right.
And that was really the first time you could be sort of quote-unquote seen in a space like that.
You could be seen by Macaroni and Cheese, the Kraft brand. There was a period of time where, like, Beefaroni was, like, tweeting at everyone, right? And he was, like, within our sphere.
Yeah.
Absolutely, no. So you could tweet at journalists, you could tweet at brands. If you're something, like, if, someone pooped next to you, like, on a flight or something like that, you could tweet directly at the airline. But really, like, you could be talking to Ronan Farrow or something like that, and that was democratizing. That was something that really laid the playing field low, and we're not going to have it again. Yeah. There was a very strictly delimited time period.
Because now access has been monetized.
Yes.
Whereas at that point, the excitement was that there was no monetary element
to
it.
For you, it was very exciting to argue online.
Yes.
Yeah, which for me, I would never. You could not make me fight you online. I was like a saint on there. You absolutely couldn't do it, but you lived for it. Yeah.
And I think there's a link in that to the idea of access as well, and it's the idea of immediacy, that everything was happening so fast.
Yeah.
That Niall Horan was right there, and if someone was fighting me, they were right there, and I could fight them right back. And when one lives in the real world, time can feel slow and dilated, but everything was so incredibly fast on Twitter. All you had to do was continue to refresh and refresh and refresh.
Right.
And you were talking earlier about how Twitter...
My theory of the diarrhea time periods and the constipated time periods, and I was like, on Twitter, that was a diarrhea period. Absolutely. Like, we were experiencing just a straight shot all the way down.
But that's really concerning for, like, the collective mind of society.
Just a lot of reasons, Emily. Yeah.
Yes, that information was digested
so quickly
at such a rapid rate that we couldn't take in any of the nutrients.
No, not at all. We had, like, Crohn's disease of the mind. Absolutely, like, is what it represented to us.
And you've brought up the idea that Twitter's evolved. It was originally in the sort of pre-image, pre-quote tweeting space. It was the space of free play, and then it became a news platform.
Yeah.
It became a space for celebrities to establish themselves, for journalists.
Yes.
You read Twitter to read the news, as opposed to reading Dwill talking about hollering at animals and God.
We should call him Dwill. Oh my God. Right? Why was there never a parody account that was like Dwill? Right? Straight up. So I was thinking about this a little bit more. I'll offer my own answer to the question. For me, after that period of creativity, that sort of like constrained Oulipian time, and also like extremely, it was like a time of improv too. It was a time of really surreal comedy, and I really valued it for that. What it shifted into, and probably what its real value was that it was the world newspaper, right? So you have the real stuff that is happening, like, on the front page, right? You have, like, war and famine and bank collapses and all these things. And then you have these weird corners where there are comics, there are obituaries, there are birth and marriage announcements, and then you have things that are what I refer to as news of the weird. And this is going to transition us sort of into the exercise portion of our workshop, where I'm going to introduce to you, and probably I should have the book, but it's in the green room, so I don't have it right now. But the name of the book is Novels in 3 Lines by Felix Feneon, and I believe we have a slide of Felix. Merci. Okay, so I'm going to take you back to the year 1906, okay? And Felix Feneon, an anarchist He was exactly. I know, very now. He was born in Turin, I think in the year maybe 1866?
1861.
1861,
Yes.
Thank you. So he was this very sort of anonymous guy who was described in a very funny way by his friends. I'll get to that in a moment. But over this period of a little more than half of the year 1906, he digested news stories in the Le Matin newspaper, and they were just kind of strange stories. And what he did was he wrote novels in 3 lines, or novellas in 3 lines about them. And so I made a little printout of these. I'll read a little bit from Lucy Sante's introduction to Novels in 3 lines. The original French title of this book, Nouvelles en 3 lignes, can mean either the news in 3 lines or novellas in 3 lines. It was the title under which these items, there are 1,220 of them in all, a mere 154 have been omitted here because their significance has fallen into obscurity, were all published in 1906 in the Paris daily newspaper Le Matin. Newspapers in many countries, apart from the United States, run columns of such brief stories, which in French are called faits divers, sundry events. They cover the same subjects as the rest of the paper: crime, politics, ceremony, catastrophe, but their individual narratives are compressed into a single frame like photographs. They may suggest, portend, echo, pose questions, present enigmas, awaken troubling memories, but they usually do not have a second act. Cases in which a story runs over into a subsequent item on a later day are rare. People have been clipping and saving such items for their oddity, or their usually unintentional humor, since the fait divers first made its appearance in the 19th century, but they have seldom, if ever, considered them literary texts attributable to an author. This is very, very Twitter to me. I mean, you don't think you are unusual in being able to attribute the rigatoni tweet to an actual person. A lot of times you can't do this. This is just this massive anonymous newspaper that is collecting news of the weird. So we're going to look at some of these novels in 3 lines, and then we're going to talk a little bit about news stories that have caught our own attention in these times. So start thinking about those, because we have a list, but I know you've got some as well. And I'm going to bust up to that freaking whiteboard, and I'm going to write on it some of my ideas.
And as you're reading these novels as well, think about why they're working, what they're telling you, what is achieved when information is compressed like this.
Yes.
Sort of shortness, concision as a stylistic feature.
So there is an interesting concept, which I'm going off book here, but we attribute it to Maurice Blanchot, and he talked about something called the récit, as distinct from the novel, and distinct really from the novella. And it is a story in which the telling of it is its own event, right? So it's not the facts that are related, it's the way in which it's told, which constitutes the literary event. So I think that's true of these. I think that's true really of the tweets that make their way into the mind. You know, if the zoo bans me for hollering at the animals, I will face God and walk backwards into hell. That's an event in itself. It's not what he's telling you, which God even knows what that is, right? Like, it is the persona he's creating and the image he's conjuring up. So I think of the récit a lot in terms of what we do on Twitter and what he's doing here. It is something that is distinct strictly from, you know, a paragraph of a few sentences that relates some facts. It is its own literary encapsulation. It's its own event. So the reason we have the novels in 3 lines is because his mistress, for some 50 years, collected them in an album, also incredibly Twitter-esque. So look at the guy above me and know this about him. One old friend claimed that he never laughed. Another that his laughter could wake the dead. He seemed completely self-invented, from his appearance to his speech to his conduct. He wore no ornaments or jewelry of any kind. He made only infrequent, slight, geometric motions when he spoke. His face remained impassive and immobile at all times. Perhaps he was Baudelaire's dandy, self-contained, self-defined, answering to a code in which ethics and aesthetics are inextricably bound, made flesh. We also think that he blew up some stuff because he was an anarchist, but it's not proved. So that's really awesome as well. He was fully committed, quote unquote, to the cause of anarchism, and furthermore had given Emile Henry one of his mother's dresses to use as a disguise when the latter delivered the bomb that blew up the police precinct house on Rue des Bons Enfants in November 1892. So this was like a cool dude. Not to be like, you should blow stuff up, but like, it's kind of cool. So, finally,
it's all very Twitter as well.
It's very incredibly.
Gender here, performance.
Absolutely, you're playing with all of these things. Yes. So, if each item, each novel in 3 lines, is a miniature clockwork of language and event, the full 1,000 and some put together make a mosaic panorama. They represent the year 1906 in France as much as what we were doing in 2011 really represented that time as well. And they are charged with the essence of that time and place in a way that is routinely available to artifacts and impersonal documents, while often remaining outside the grasp of literature, which Twitter really did for a long time and still does. There have been attempts to bring it within that sphere, my own attempt among them, but it still is resistant, I think, to that inclusion. I mean, it can be archived by the Library of Congress, but there's something about it that remains rogue, that remains outside. They testify to the growing importance and menace of the automobile, the medieval conditions that still prevailed in agriculture and country life, the often fortunate inefficiency of firearms, the vulnerability of rural populations to epidemic disease, the unflagging pomposity of the military establishment, the mutual suspicion and profound lack of understanding between the French and their colonial subjects, to say the least, the increasing number of strikes, and the unchangingly brutal state of factory labor, the continuing panic over the threat of anarchist bombs. It was the dead middle of the Third Republic, which stretched from the end of the Franco-Prussian War to the eve of World War II. And, in fact, Feneon dies in 1944. So his 3-line news items, considered as a single work, represent a crucial, if hitherto overlooked, milestone in the history of modernism. Even as the entries are obsessively handcrafted, the work is, in a sense, the first ready-made. It heralds the age of mass media via a sensibility formed by the cadences and symmetries of classical prose, forecasts a century of statistics while foregrounding individual quotidian detail, invites speed of consumption while manifesting time-consuming labor of execution. It recognizes its own transience but does not concede to it. It savors the ironies of chance without fabricating a moral agency to explain them, but never shies from properly attributing the consequences of power, greed, and stupidity. Like the work of certain photographers, it is dispassionate sometimes to the point of cruelty, but by the same token, respecting its readers, it does not package a facile response for them. It is a dry bundle of small slivers of occurrence that lie beneath history, but it represents the whole world with all of its contradictions. That sounds a lot like Twitter, okay? And this book was released in 2007, and guess what? Twitter did not yet exist. So Lucy Sante was ready for it.
She's onto something.
She's onto it.
I'm just so struck by those themes.
Oh,
that
yeah.
She meant that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
How similar those are.
Yes. So we can turn to the novels in 3 lines. I would love to have people read some. Could we do? Would we have any volunteers? I can also do so, and Emily can do so. But I love to have people read out loud.
Raise your hand high. Don't be shy.
Wait.
This is an intimate space.
It is.
We're bearing it all
it's
here.
It's wonderful. We can also make Audrey do it. She's got a low, booming voice. We can have her. Anyone? I can go ahead. Wait. Georgia, correct?
Yeah.
Wait.
Because his friend refused to kill him, a 19-year-old boy of Lifo, Haute-Marne, got himself beheaded by a train.
Atop the train station in Enghien, a painter was electrocuted. His jaws could be heard clacking. Then he fell on the glass roof. Anyone? Wait.
The parish priest of La Compote, Savoie, was walking through the hills alone. He lay down, naked, under a beech tree and died of aneurysm.
Emily, take one.
At census time, the mayor of Montiratin nudged the figures upward. His eagerness to govern a multitude cost him his job. Maybe we could just pass the microphone around the room.
I love the next one, too. Yeah, let's do it. This is fun.
Bonneau, a locksmith in Montreuil, was chatting on his doorstep when the gangster called Shoeface struck him twice with a knife.
Oh, here we have one of the rabies ones, yeah.
I've got the rabies one. Franchet of Lyon, who had been bitten by a pug, but had apparently recovered. tried to bite his wife and died rabid.
Rabid people are a huge theme in this book. There were so many more of them at that time. Yeah.
The sinister prowler seen by the mechanic Guiquel near Herblay train station has been identified. Jules Menard, snail collector.
Patricia, you go ahead while we pass the microphone.
Mademoiselle Eugène Manuel refused to pay twice for her husband's gravestone. The court found in her favor. That is a really mysterious one to me. We'll talk in more depth about some of these, but I'm really like, what was going on with the double payment for the gravestone? Oh, you do the next one, Emily.
Got it. In the vicinity of Noisy-sur-École, Monsieur Louis Delilleux, 70, dropped dead of sunstroke. Quickly, his dog Fido ate his head.
From the great rose window of the portal of the Cathedral of Amiens, dear to Ruskin, a stone fell onto the steps. Some of them are just very poetic and lovely.
Dear to Ruskin.
Way,
Love that.
dear to Ruskin.
The fleas of his neighbor Giacolino, who was their trainer, bothered Monsieur Sauvin. He tried to steal their case and was shot twice.
People, as they say, you know, in the introduction, were constantly being shot, and we're fine. It really seemed like the inefficiency of firearms was not overstated.
Someone in the audience.
Wait.
Who's got the microphone?
Who's got the mic?
Alfonso. Go.
Alfonso! No, he doesn't have it. Okay.
All right. Go, Patricia.
No, she's got it.
Oh.
Yep.
The school children of Niort were being crowned. The chandelier fell, and the laurels of 3 among them were spotted with a little blood.
Right? It's chilling. You're like, are they dead? Is one dead and the other's okay? What happened to these children? Why were they being crowned? What was the ceremony, right? Oh, this next one is heartbreaking.
Before jumping into the Seine where he died, Monsieur Ducrin had written in his notebook, "Forgive me, Dad, I like you."
Isn't that the saddest thing you've ever heard in your life?
He had bet he could drink 15 absinthes in succession while eating a kilo of beef. After the 9th, Théophile Papin of Ivry collapsed.
I think that one's my favorite.
That one's really good. I mean, it's something about 15 absinthes in succession while eating a kilo of beef.
And there's something distinctly French about it, too.
There is
Absinthe,
something.
kilo, beef, the name of Ivry.
Right. So in America, it's like Cool Hand Luke, and he's eating, you know, how many
a pound
eggs?
of Big Macs.
No, it's like so many eggs. It's like 100. It's so many eggs. And you finally watch the movie, and you're like, yeah, he's going to die from eating all those eggs, man. Ooh, who's got it? Ah, wait.
A young woman was sitting on the ground in Choisy-le-Roi. The only identifying word that amnesia allowed her was model.
Isn't it like, ooh, right? Like, ooh. Ooh, do another one.
Oh, really? With this word? I don't even know what this is.
I know, this is crazy. I'm going to talk about this a little bit because it's like nuts, right? Go ahead.
Cantankerous?
Yes, cantankerous, yes.
The cantankerous tribunal at Constantine sent away a 14-year-old fawn who had by force made love to an antique native of Malta.
Isn't there so much freaking going on? So Emily and I were talking about fawn in that context, and we're like, I guess it's like someone who's sexually assaulting people, but isn't that just nicer to say? Like sometimes you just don't want to have to be like, oh, a rapist, a fawn, a satyr. We can say these things instead. So I was like,
a
this
lovely
is
little
showing
woodland
me-
creature.
I know, like prancing thing, much better. Oh, this one's sweet. Okay. Who's got it?
You take this one. And
Okay.
We'll keep passing the mic around.
Doing very nicely in his hospital diapers, a 2-month-old infant has been found in Plaine Saint-Denis by a piling of the Soissons Bridge. And that one's just nice, because, like, that baby's fine. He's doing nicely in his hospital diapers.
A dishwasher from Nancy, Vitel Frérot, who had just come back from Lourdes, cured forever of tuberculosis, died Sunday by mistake.
It's so sad. Okay, so people are constantly thinking that they're getting cured of tuberculosis and rabies, and neither one of these things is being cured. So I've slotted the next one with it because we have sadly another rabies. Oh, Audrey, you're on the
Audrey, take it
rabies
away.
tip.
Audrey's got rabies.
The Anti-Rabies Institute of Lyon had cured Mademoiselle Lebruchon, but as the dog had been rabid, she died all the same.
Okay, I mean, again, a lot going on. What is the Anti-Rabies Institute as opposed to like the Pro-Rabies Institute, right? Like this thing existed. This is a real person, you know? It could have been what happened to your mom. Will you write a novel in 3-line about your mother?
I will.
Okay, wait,
you'll all
wait.
hear. My mother's fine.
Yeah, she's fine, but she might have almost been rabid for a time.
She might be on Zoom right now. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
if you see this, Kate.
Sorry.
Send your own novel in the
I'm so glad
chat.
you're not rabid. Very good. Good job. Now, this next one was included strictly for Dick Cheney reasons. Zoe, take it away.
All of the lead intended by Monsieur Prenat for the partridges of Aloe Leroy was instead taken by his friend Claret in the rum.
Yeah, so Dick Cheney did that. I was like, I wrote Dick Cheney in the book. I was just like, Dick Cheney.
Sorry to this man.
Oh, this one is poetic too. Yeah, this is one I have for a poetry reason.
Frogs sucked up from Belgian ponds by the storm rained down upon the streets of the red light district of Dunkirk.
So I really like that one because I always like when there's a rain of any kind of animal. That's huge to me. My favorite thing in the world. But then the red light district, right? So Feneon is really a Dunkirk. I know. So he's really getting the details. It would be an amazing literary project to dig up the actual stories that he was working from, like the police blotters. But like, yeah, he really had the telling detail. I feel in order for something to be considered its own universe, you have this introduction, right? This entrance into the universe. You have the action or you have the event, and then you have, I think, the ironic turn that dispels everything you think you know about that place. And that is what makes it a whole thing unto itself and not just, 3 random lines. I think we skipped, the Catholic youth of Pas-de-Calais will congregate today in Bethune. 100 gendarmes will prevent its moving as a body. It's just like very beautiful. All right. Oh yeah, the drunkards one is good too. Who's got it?
Who's got drunkards?
I'll do it.
Oh wait.
Yes. There is no longer God even for drunkards. Calcini of Saint-Germain, who had mistaken the window for the door, is dead.
It's so beautiful. And then this one, just because it's sad.
Patricia, take it.
Oh, I'll take it. Well, okay. A little girl, tan, plump, hair braided, clothed and shod in brown cloth, holy medals around her neck, has been fished out at Suresnes. You do the next one.
It's hard to follow that.
I want you to say ouch really loudly.
Ouch! cried the cunning oyster eater. A pearl! A pearl! A pearl! Someone at the next table bought it for 100 francs. It had cost 30 cents at the dime store.
I love that. That's something I'm going to do. Honestly, can we all do that? Yeah. I'm going to see if it tricks anybody. I have all those fake pearls that I wore for the 20s party. I'm just going to bust up that necklace and do this for the rest of my life. And then I thought that this next one was the logical ending, but I think someone with a better French accent should read it other than me.
It'll be yours. You have to take it.
Me?
Yep.
I'm gonna take it.
Do your best French accent.
It's gonna be so bad, and it's so sad too. Like so many others, Patereau was the last survivor of the siege of Antwerp. He died at Onzen, Loire-et-Cher, aged 98 years and 8 months. It's just one of those great ones because it's like, you can read it both ways. Like so many others, he had claimed to be the last survivor, or like so many others, as they die one by one, right? He had been the last survivor. So, very interesting, and also where math becomes a problem for me. All right, so what do we notice about these? What does make them intact? What constitutes the telling detail? Is he cruel? What are your thoughts?
And also, if you don't think they're intact, you can share that as well.
You can share that as well.
If you disagree with the thesis that these are whole universes.
That these are whole universes, yeah. I mean, there is always something about a news story that if it's, well done, it should be its entire universe. It should take us into the place where that scene is happening. But it's certainly true that when I first read novels in 3 lines, I was like, some of these are really great. I don't get all of them, but the more you read, the more it really unfolded the layers. So you take that, and while we perhaps talk about that, I'm going to write on the board some ideas for news stories of our own time that we could write novels in 3 lines about. And I think that you will have some ideas as well.
So we will open it up to the audience now if anyone wants to share a story that particularly jumped out at them, that struck them, if there's a reason that it struck you or a reason that it didn't. I was very struck by the Ruskin one. Where is it? From the great rose window of the portal of the Cathedral of Amiens, dear to Ruskin, a stone fell onto the steps. I think it has a lovely cadence to it. I think the mention of Ruskin, is surprising. There's an interesting element of surprise to it. So if anyone would like to share. It's not going to erase. Luckily, we've written down. We're okay. We've written down the news items that we can share with people. And then we were going to point at it with the spoon. I like that you can't erase Twitter. No. You've tried. Yeah. The shadow remains, the trace. Forever. It's going into the archives, yeah.
Okay, so the news stories that we sort of brainstormed for this.
This is for you to write your own.
This is for you to write your own novel in 3 lines.
We'll give you about 5-10 minutes to do so afterwards.
Oh, yeah. And you can take the rest of your lives as well.
Yeah.
So, all right, charismatic news stories. Ever Given.
Explain maybe what Ever Given was.
Do people not remember Ever Given?
I knew it. I didn't know it was called that when you mentioned it to me.
Oh my gosh!
It's when the ship got stuck in the canal.
Stuck in the Suez Canal. Yeah, Ever Given.
See, Zoe's online.
Yeah, Zoe's
she knows.
online. Okay, so we could
here. I prepared some information about Ever Given for those who don't remember it well. It was a container ship that became stuck at an angle in the Suez Canal during a sandstorm on March 23rd, blocking for 6 days a vital waterway through which about 15% of all shipping passes. See, I copy-pasted that from a news article, but that's interesting syntax.
I was going to say, that's actually almost, you could probably make some cuts to that and have it be really syntactically interesting. Yeah. So even when you're doing these things, he probably did some of this himself. You're not writing it, from whole cloth. In some of it, you're sort of moving words around. You're kind of looking at the police blotter and looking at the actual language. Here's another one where we can look at the actual language. The Glasgow Wonka experience. Quote, it was billed as the place where chocolate dreams become reality. I think that many of us remember the Wonka experience just a couple weeks. I think it was a week ago. It was not long. Yeah. So that would be.
For those who don't remember this, if you didn't know about the Glasgow Wonka experience, as we said, it was billed as a sort of chocolate paradise.
Chocolate paradise.
People in Glasgow sold tickets to a celebration of chocolate in all its delightful forms, but it ended up a tragic tale worthy of an Oompa Loompa song. They charged up to £35 for tickets, promising an immersive experience based on the film Wonka, which just came out with Timothée Chalamet. And as people arrived at this address in Glasgow, it was in an industrial area, they discovered a sparsely decorated warehouse with a scattering of plastic props, a small bouncy castle, and some backdrops pinned against the wall. There's a sort of famous image of a very sad-looking Oompa Loompa. It's just a woman just very orange from the self-tan.
The children were limited to 3 jelly beans apiece, so it was not a place where chocolate dreams become reality.
And the event publicity promised giant mushrooms, candy canes, chocolate fountains, special audio and visual effects, all narrated by dancing Oompa Loompas. And ultimately, police were called to report this fraud. There was a Facebook group formed to share images of the crying
Audrey,
children.
It's crazy.
It's rich.
So I highly recommend the BBC story. The BBC story is the best. Okay, so some simpler ones. Elizabeth Holmes, Blood Addict. Obviously, the deep voice, the blonde hair, the eye makeup, you can bring it all in there. Her weird text to that guy. The Hobby Lobby smuggling scandal of religious artifacts. Are they, in fact, funding ISIS? Who can say?
The Bible Museum in Washington, D.C.?
Wait.
What's up with them? What's going on there?
Anytime there is a butter crisis in Norway, you can absolutely write a novel in 3 lines about that.
And that did happen in 2011.
Wait, it did indeed.
With acute shortage of butter and inflation of price across the markets,
Yes.
it caused soaring prices. Stores' stocks of butter ran out within minutes of deliveries, and Norway began to experience the s'more panic, which is the butter panic.
Remember, there was the guy that did the video where he was crying. He's like, you think it's not a big deal, but it's a really big deal to us. And it was actually super, super touching, like that he had lost his butter and he was really, really
He's
upset.
holding like a thing of margarine.
Yeah,
or
he was
something.
holding a thing of margarine and he was like crying.
I can't believe it's not butter
man.
written on it.
Why is there a butter shortage in Norway?
And that hit France recently, so that's close to home.
Right. So you could write about the French one as well. Yeah. All right. This next one contributed by Emily. Army Hammer is a cannibal. Right? Kind of speaks for itself. Yeah. I don't know if anyone really remembers the sarcophagus, the coffin juice. So there was a coffin that was discovered. She's got it. She's like, I remember the coffin juice for sure. Yeah, so a mysterious sarcophagus was dug up filled with an enticing red liquid that many people wanted to drink. Or there was a change.org petition to allow people to drink the juice from the black mystery sarcophagus.
Quote the person who launched the petition, the goal is to turn the liquid into some sort of carbonated monster-esque energy drink so that people can, and I quote, assume the skeleton's powers and finally die.
Yes, that's right. That was a good one.
And there was debate preceding this that they really shouldn't open the sarcophagus anyways, because in movies
to
that
release
goes poorly.
The spirits and the
so
curse.
they open it, and
in
fact it was sewage water. Is what they found.
Yeah. So not spoiler alert. It was sewage water. And then there were some that were just in my book as well. The eels in London are on cocaine. Any sort of story like that where they're like the animals in your city. The rats in New York are addicted to nicotine. These could all be the subjects of
and
these novellas.
this really was a news article.
Wait.
So a team at King's College found that lots of Londoners were using cocaine and then dumping it in the river, I guess, when they were done with it, which is very silly.
Doesn't make sense.
So it says concentrations of cocaine and another drug
So
remained high in
uppers and
wastewater across
downers.
across the week, with only a minor increase over the weekend. London is known as the highest consumers of cocaine. This suggests everyday usage. And then they found in a separate report that European eels appear hyperactive when put in water containing small doses of cocaine. So there are eels in the Thames, there's cocaine in the Thames, and the concern is that the two are mixing.
I do like how literal you're being about this. She's like,
I did my research.
I'm like, the eels in London are on cocaine. She's like, so here's what's going on. There's some eels and there's cocaine in the Thames. And so ultimately that means that the eels in London are on cocaine. I really think that it's summed up by the eels in London are on cocaine.
I have not gotten the three lines memo.
No. So what do we have, like 5, 10 minutes?
We're running out of time. So
we're running out of a little bit of time. So now brainstorm.
So we'll give you 5 minutes.
5 minutes to
Right
write
away.
a novel in 3 lines.
Yeah.
And also any news story
Yeah.
that you have heard of,
Anything
since
that
we are
comes to
clearly
mind.
reading different newspapers and you are in a different country.
Something weird that just happened to you
Something
today.
weird that just happened, and Emily's about to write one about her mom getting rabies.
I am.
So
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
All right, take one more minute. All right. Who's going to be our sacrificial victim? The first one to share. Audrey. Yes. Take it away.
It's not news, it's library lore. Okay, but not our library. Having inadequately measured his rope, the thwarted Gutenberg thief was discovered, legs akimbo, next to his elusive prize, by the Dawn security guard upon entering the rotunda. So a thief rappelled through the ceiling of the rotunda where there's a Gutenberg Bible in the Widener Library, and he didn't measure his rope, so he hung there until he fell and broke his legs, and the security guard found him in the morning next to his Gutenberg Bible.
This is exactly the kind of story we're talking about, right? So a lot of the Feneon things are like, oh, catastrophic murders, deaths, and then there are things like that. News of the weird. A+, Audrey. Anyone else?
We co-authored this. Japanese diaper company switches target audience due to aging population.
Yeah, that's good. And that's just a single line. So you know what? If you can get in and get out, like even better. I can sense it. Something on this side.
I don't. I'm still working on this, but Madame Poitier of Belleville is searching for her cat after another toilet paper shortage.
No, I like that.
I love this.
It's done.
Because
It's a work in progress.
It's a universe that's not quite complete.
Right.
Like it's such a wrench in the
Yeah.
end of it. You don't know.
It's true.
You're
It's
left
the
with
torque.
more questions than you began
Absolutely.
with.
Yes.
Yeah. You've got the ironic turn that Patricia was talking about.
I
in the
wrote a
beginning.
pandemic one.
Excellent.
Which, like, I don't know if anyone even remembers about this story. The hole in the noodle becomes the hole in the world. Bucatini on its axis will twirl again.
I have chills.
Thank you. I know. You've got chills.
Yeah.
I want bucatini.
Thinking about that bucatini
Just, I know, it was just twirling and twirling. Like, it was terrible, right? They were like, we don't. And she said, here they had only smooth penne. And I'm like, well, that's horrible, too. That's really bad. You need those ridges.
You need those micro grooves.
Did
That's
you
how they
get?
catch
Did
the
you?
pasta.
Did you manage a rabies?
I'm attempting a rabies.
All right,
I'll
getting
give you my
close.
attempt at rabies. Told the rabies shot would be ineffective against rabies. Woman relieved to discover herself not rabid.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely perfect. And in fact, it goes into the book that we were just considering because rabies was the biggest concern of the year 1906.
As it is in 2024.
As it has come to be again. Yes, it is again a problem. I feel there's another. Way.
Yeah.
I can always feel when there's more.
If you were here last night, you might know that this one's a bit on brand for me.
Yeah?
A new photo of Ashley Olsen has been released from her recent vacation. The Wayfish former child star turned fashion designer is shown walking through the jungle with a machete in one hand and a beer in the other.
What? Why?
I'm obsessed with this picture.
Okay.
Did this actually
So you
happen?
have an Olsen twins thing, like
I
a whole
do.
thing, an absolute thing.
They raised
like,
me.
is
They
there
raised me.
is there a reason? There's
I think I just like wanted a twin to have a hijinks with.
Oh no, I meant why did she have the machete?
Oh, that's
I obviously understand the Olsen thing. Yes.
I think one of the reasons that made this photo so interesting is that after the child star years, the Olsen twins became very elusive.
Yeah, they did.
The Row recently had their show in Paris Fashion Week this year, where no photos were allowed at all.
Okay.
They really enjoy mystery after probably a lot of trauma from being overexposed since infancy. Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought the photo of her walking, she's very, very elegantly sloping on a path in the jungle. She has a beer in one hand and a machete in the other.
Okay, so I think we can
elegant,
workshop this.
dangerous, mysterious.
Yes, but I think that something you said, I think can bring in the turn that we're talking about. So if you bring in something like the fact that she's elusive, compare that to something in the jungle, like elusive as you know, a jungle snake, something like that, comma, you know, the Olsen twin was spotted in this place, right? So you need the thing, I think, that's like, what is the mystery in this universe, right? Like, anyone can be walking with the machete and the beer, although obviously no one is doing that. So yeah, it's like that injection, that little turn that just wraps it all the way around. And a lot of times when you talk it through, like, you say the thing, right? You say the thing that actually completes it. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
We're so out of time.
Oh, no, I mean.
But I wanted to take a quick moment to ask anyone to share any reflections they have on what this reveals to us about the way like news and information is delivered and consumed, and how style impacts that. It's easy when you read things like the news or like Twitter to think that it's coming from a neutral place, but actually the way that things are said impacts
it comes
the
through
saying,
a person.
impacts
Absolutely.
the information.
And it's so, I mean, in many ways it's so memorable that like Audrey or Emily can immediately pick up the cadence, you know, the involutions and the grammar. Like, all of us are doing that all the time with the way things are written. And you don't think about them coming from a person, but they do. So we have in this like a very specific example of this anonymous guy who over, you know, this single year sort of created this voice that now we can sit in a room and we can sound like him, we can write like him, and we can like take a lesson from the way he worked. Yeah.
If anyone has any final thoughts.
Yeah, or any final novels. Do you have one?
Can we have a big round of applause for Patricia? Please.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been just such a delight.
It's been a pleasure. You said you had
residency.
like a votive candle that I'm gonna light it.
It's in the back.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, we don't
have
have
the
to do
votive
it
candle.
now.
Yes,
but we're gonna do it.
There will be a
afterwards.
ritual.
There will be a ritual
the space will be
afterwards.
cleansed, purified.
And I'll just be hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for coming out
Thank you
tonight and participating in this. As I said before, Patricia is just the single most brilliant person on the planet, and her books are for sale as well. So if you'd like to,
I'll
sort
have
of
my
absorb
spoon with me. So come visit.
You can be blessed with the spoon.
Right.
As we learned tonight, we are all immensely sensitive, receptive to the voices that we consume. So you must consume your books intelligently. And I can vouch for Patricia. Read her books. This is a voice that you want to absorb.
Well
and
turned,
learn.
Emily.
So
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the library. Yes, and come visit. Wait.
Have a lovely evening. Thank you all.